Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mission 300 podcast. Today we are here with Tommy and Caleb. The other two compadres are not available this evening, but will be joining us next time. We are going to be discussing doing challenges. So, one thing we wanted to do beginning in December and then going into the future is rather than just talking about ideas, because there's so much information to listen to, we wanted to actually do our ideas, do our thoughts, do the things that we are discussing, and then test them. And so that way it's much more interactive, and we are going to begin opening it up to invite you guys, the listeners, to participate in our challenges and then come back and discuss them, and then hopefully maybe we do a couple challenges where we invite a listener on to discuss how the challenges helped them. So this is going to begin kind of introducing what these challenges are and what this means and why we're going to do them. And so just a little background, our Mission 300 program, we've been using challenges for leadership development for the last 13, 14 years. And they're going to seem like small, just basic things that you do every day, and then we do them competitively. And there's a reason we do them competitively versus just doing the activity is there's a benefit, and we'll talk more about that on the podcast. But we kicked off last week. We got together as a group and said we're going to do a 7-day challenge. And so we started a 300 strong challenge, and that included cold shower for 30 seconds every day, 10 minutes of listening to the Father every day, meditate on one verse or passage every day throughout the day. So that's not just like for 10 seconds, that's like all day. Be deliberate. Run a cumulative total of 3 miles over 7 days. Not a big deal. So again, we're doing things that you could chunk out and anyone can do all day long. And the final was 30 push-ups, 30 sit-ups, 30 air squats that you have all day to do. So this was our main pieces of our challenge. So we're going to start breaking them down, what was easy, what was hard, and why we're doing it this way, and how the future is going to look of things that we can add into this. I'm also going to add that we pick things in a challenge that are beneficial to our life, but are not those critical things that are heavy on our mind, because those areas are hard to do challenges with because we're too emotionally involved. This creates a different set of emotions about doing the challenge, and there's going to be a reason for that. We'll discuss that later on through the podcast. So, kicking off, why don't we go to Tommy and tell us what was the hardest challenge of all these that you found?
Yeah, so one of the sneaky hard challenges this week for me, well, I'm going to share two. The first one was simply due to the environment. Uh, the cold showers, which I talked about over the last couple weeks, I've done them, energized, ready to go. They become a lot harder when it's snowing and you come in from shoveling and all that. So there was a couple days missed of that, but that's a habit I think needs to continue. And Bryan, I think you should share too about your experience with them. Different challenges in different ways, right? Uh, the next one that really I think is what I walked away these last 5 days, just really wanting to dive deeper into and meditate more on, was that 10 minutes of hearing the Father's voice. The first day doing it, I just remember being like 8 minutes in, and I had to stop and had to look at my phone because I'm like, I there's no silence. My mind was just going every which way, all these different things that kept popping up into my mind, and I couldn't quiet my own mind to even hear God on purpose. And it was something over the next couple days as the challenge went on, that when I went to do that, it's just like there's so much noise going on. And we had talked last week about it was the 300 strong challenge, and I just remember talking to Bryan and Jason about it and just being like, if we're gonna go to battle, we need to know how to hear the God's voice in the rest, but we also need to be able to hear him in the midst of the fight. Like, how do we hear God's voice in the midst of the battle? And it's crazy to me that we've gone all on this podcast and talked all about it, and then here when I purposely go to silence to hear God's voice and peace, I couldn't even do it for 10 minutes without all this noise. And I didn't feel like God spoke a word to me this whole week. But to me, that's a challenge that I can move forward into. It's like, man, I thought I could hear God's voice in the midst of work, calls, dealing with all these different problems, and I think I'm hearing God and do this, do this. I think I'm hearing God, but I can't hear him in the silence. It's like, wow, I have way too many podcasts going. I have way too much music going. I have way too much social media. I have just way too much going on that I can't sit and be with the Father. Like that to me was just a glaring red flag. And so um, that to me is one that if it's not on our challenge this next week, over the next month, it's going to be a personal challenge of mine. I'm going to grow in that area. So I want to be confident when I'm talking about that on the podcast. And so that to me was just something that popped up over this 5 days, where it's like when you start pursuing something on purpose, you start to see a little bit more of the downfalls in that. So that to me was by far the most challenging.
Yeah, I'd be pretty on a pretty similar page with Tommy there. First of all, I would say I wasn't here last week to help make the decisions on the challenges, and I would never suggest something as so bad as 30 seconds of cold shower. When I saw that pop up on my phone with this beautiful app, it was it was a bit scary, but we got through it some of the time. Did not successfully make it through the whole time. But I agree. I think my favorite one was the 10 minutes listening to the Father, mainly because it kind of opened my eyes back up to something like in the past year that I've been kind of thinking about, but it's hard to realize something until you put yourself through it, like you were saying, Tommy, like really hearing the voice of God. And when I got off the Appalachian Trail last year, I went and spent 2 weeks with my grandma in Nova Scotia, Canada, where there is absolutely nothing. Like there's no, I mean, I think there's like a McDonald's 30 minutes away. And I remember I was super satisfied sitting for like 2 hours outside at her house in silence, just looking at clouds go by and everything like that. And I think just to me, that felt like spending time with God, even if there wasn't like conversation, but just because the amount of time on trail with no headphones, no music, like people who I knew called me crazy because I was like, yeah, I'm doing it with no music, no podcasts. And occasionally in the beginning, it was audiobooks, but I just knew it was like I had to quiet my mind. And so this week, going back to 10 minutes, I will say it was like a little disappointing because I was like, my goodness, what happened between like a year, just over a year ago, basically, about a year exactly, actually. And now, when 10 minutes is like hard to keep my attention on like one thing and not have my thoughts go to the last podcast I listened to, the latest quote unquote political update, or even like music tunes popping into my head, like Christmas songs, like things like that, where it's like it's not a bad thing, but it's just this weird distraction. And so it was like a real eye opener to like how much noise and distraction there is. And like last year, if last year me, like 12 months ago, me was listening to me say this now, I'd be like, didn't you learn anything? Like kind of laughing at myself because I would go, remember how like I don't know, it's just weird. Like never had I been more like connected in my life with God in that aspect of there's no other noise. Like it's really just me and God out here. Like what if it was really all taken away from you? What if you could never listen to a podcast again? What if, I mean, I was even very minimal on my interactions with people. Like what happens when all this gets stripped away? And so to have that reminder again and see how that feels, I think it's like it really is. There's a book called Practicing the Presence of God, and I remember listening to that audiobook, and that's one I'm gonna reread this week because it really is a practice that I realized I need to keep. So like Tommy said, that's something like I mean 10 minutes is a good start, and that's just something that needs to be a part of my life because I realize I miss it in a sense too, and miss like the how it was before, if that makes sense. And I know that's like a place of just working towards that, letting all these other voices and distractions fall away and focus on God. And I think that's like, to me, that's one of the most important things. So the reminder was like kind of a surreal feeling that I was like, I can't believe I let it get to this. So,
That's a really interesting point you brought up, Caleb, and maybe we could dive deeper into it at some point. But you said, what if you could never listen to a podcast again? To me, that goes back to like, what if you could never attend a church service again with like a pastor? What if you could never listen to worship music again? What if you couldn't XYZ way you learn about the Bible? Like, do we even make room for God, our Father, to teach us anything? Like in reality, like this last week has just made me really reflect, like how much of what I am learning is from God or is from man. And not to say that those things are bad. Here we are on a podcast sharing what we learn. They're not bad, but if 75% of the time you're learning from a podcast and 25% you're learning from God, like maybe somewhere along this line of getting ultimate productivity and always being able to do many things, maybe somewhere in that we've actually lost the art of focusing and lost the art of being fathered, like truly learning. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe the word attending or attention is really probably the more closer thing. In the quieting yourself, I really love that exercise. I have grown, but one thing that I have done as a kind of a practice, especially over this last year, but probably over the last couple of years, uh, I have music on in the car all the time, but only like a jazz or some kind of inspiration, no words. When I go for a run, I have my epic soundtracks. I got my music that kind of motivates me, no words. When I just have music on in the house, I like jazz. I'll have jazz playing, Christmas music. I love Christmas music, but it'll be like more of a Christmas jazz, so it's all instrumental, no words. And the reason is I don't want some. Now I like music with words, don't get me wrong, but that's almost more like a specialty, but not my norm. Because I can sit down, and one thing that I should have probably added that would have been helpful to this, but it was fun listening to how you guys are coming to your conclusion of listening. One thing that was helpful to me is when I sat down and was being quiet, I I asked God, I want to know something about you, of how you think.
mm,
And so I sat, and more like I was listening and looking outside or just looking at nature. Anytime a thought came, I just put it aside because no, I want to hear what he has to say about himself. So it became not about me. I wanted to know something about him. It was very insightful. It was very insightful. And
mm,
uh, it was so I had a couple really good teaching moments. And just so you guys know, as we're talking about hearing God's voice, and you know, it was John who said, we have the anointing from the Holy One that we know all things. We don't need another man to teach us. It doesn't mean we don't need teachers. It doesn't mean we don't need coaches, pastors, and all these things. This isn't like a separate thing. But as I'm hearing God's voice, then I come, like even with our group, I can chat, man, this is what I heard. And we're like, yeah, that's scripture too. And it reinforces together what's from God and versus you got to quit staying up late and eating pizza because there's no correlation in any, that's how we use the body, each other, to know when we're on track and when we're off track. Does that make sense? But that listening was so profound. I enjoy it, but I have spent a lot of time deliberately I haven't probably listened to a podcast now in a long time. Maybe a little clip because I want to know some information, but I read. What I did find is stopping to go do it.
Mm,
Like I'll forget, go stop and go do this. Like I like doing it, but I never stop to go do it. So my value of it hasn't risen higher than other things. So that's what I noticed in me in doing is like I didn't value it enough that it wasn't first thing on my mind or whatever. I'll tell you of all these that were the first thing on my mind, that dumb 30-second shower. I thought about it from the time I woke up all day. I'm like, I got to go do that shower. And what's the point of checking everything else off if you don't get the shower done? And so I had to think about that shower. And I thought that was an interesting correlation. One, I'm refreshed by. By the way, the shower is totally refreshing when it's over, but it's mentally frustrating to get there. And that's what I thought about. So it kind of exposed how my brain worked when I was doing these challenges. Thought that was
mm,
kind of interesting too.
Yeah, one thing that helped me on the challenges was figuring out how to incorporate them into a habit I already had. So, like with the cold shower, I pretty much shower every morning for the most part, just because it's like how I feel like I can start my day. So it's like, all right, this is the only time I'm gonna shower, so it's just gotta happen when I do it first thing in the morning. And I think that helped with the other challenges as well, because it would be like, all right, if I don't do it first thing in the morning, it's not gonna happen. And the times I did not do it first thing in the morning, it did not happen. And it's like, I think that's really big because it sets a, I mean, it's like we've always talked about like even the principle of like making your bed, like they say that in the military, like it's like how you set the precedent for your day and everything. So I think that was big because the days was successful was when it was like, all right, I'm gonna get up before everybody else because I know I'm not gonna have any time to myself the rest of this week because it's Thanksgiving week, and I'm gonna get this done. Otherwise, at the end of the day, I'm gonna go, oh, I'm going to bed and like really quickly get to bed before I have a chance to do anything. So I think that was a big thing too, was like the challenges help set a precedent for the day. And even though it was a week off of like not doing anything, my day was quite a bit different on the days I did do the challenges first. So I think that was I mean, that's something but then when you do it, it's like, again, this reminder of like when you put yourself in it, oh man, like I can't believe I forgot this, like how this is, because now I'm actively doing it and seeing how it plays out instead of just knowing this principle in my head of if I get up and run first thing in the morning, my day's going to be better and I'm going to feel like I'm moving in a direction during the day. And I can say that, but if I don't do that, there's no point in knowing that. So,
That's good. Hey, if I can throw one more thing out that I brought something up, I didn't close it on the. I love that, Caleb, by the way, starting your day. Like if it goes in the beginning, I did find that too gets crowded out by the end of the day. In the 10 minutes of listening, the getting rid of the noises, you do practice it, but when you're attending to something, like if you're really enjoying fishing or you're really enjoying the company of someone, even if it's not talking, just being in the company, you don't have to say something. Your brain isn't running all over because you're present in those things. And so I believe part of the challenge with sit and listening to God is we want to say he's personal, but we don't see him as personal because the things have to be heavy or life things or eternity or these really big things that we need versus what makes you laugh. I know that seems silly, but I mean, if you ask, he'll tell you, and it will usually be something that makes you laugh too. And there's a humor in him. And I don't want people to listen go, wow, you're so trivializing God. No, it's in the play and in the personal when is where you really get the strength of big major events that take place. That's when you have that confidence in that person. And you look at any kid, you even look at military, at the humor and the joking and the stuff they do with each other, because when it all hits the fan, that's what bonds them together. They know each other. And so, yes, so it's not trivializing him, but it matters because it matters to us and it's how we train our kids. So I wanted just to throw that out. We can lighten up this 10 minutes of talk time and don't bring a problem to it. Don't bring something you need an answer to. Don't bring any of that. Just this is him just talking with you. So ask the question and let him answer. So I want to
Can
throw that out there.
I really love that because the way, and I think like I want to say this was like a year or two ago on the podcast, we kind of had a similar conversation. I remember kind of while we were talking about, interacting with God where it's not like this heavy, big life thing. I think ever since we talked about it, it's kind of stuck in my head. I remember when I was a kid, I would go outside. I did not care about baseball, did not watch baseball, did not play baseball, literally never played baseball. But it was like, hey, dad, you want to go throw the baseball around? And like my dad never had any connection to baseball or didn't care about sports. But it was like that simple thing of going outside and then just throwing the baseball back and forth. I don't remember anything we talked about, but I remember doing that with my dad. And so I think, like, Bryan, that's a huge point of what you're saying of like, don't go sit down and expect that you're having another chapter of the Bible being like written right before you or something. I think it's like that simple activity of doing something with God. And like you were saying, Tommy, like giving God a chance to father you. What does that look like? Well, I remember my dad fathering me, and that was him throwing the baseball back and forth. And I don't remember what the conversation was, but it was the time together that meant something to me. And so I think that's huge, Bryan, because like that's what I think of when I think of spending time with God. And
Yeah.
it's not like that big. It doesn't have to be something big with big expectations. And it opens it up a lot more. So
So true.
And
So
I think
true.
a takeaway from me from all that is just how do I practice the silence more? Like how do I get rid of the noise, the podcast, the music, the stuff that I don't necessarily need? Like how do I eliminate that so that I can open my mind up for these conversations with God? Like purposefully pursuing that. I think that was a big point. Going back
Can I
to
maybe the question's backwards. Why do we have to be filled with all these podcasts, noise, and things? Why do we have to have that? Maybe it's not I'm trying to get rid of the noise. The question is, why are you needing the noise to begin with? Because we know we only absorb so much information like that we can do. So it's like, that's we don't need to discuss it today, but I think that's the bigger question. Why am I needing all this noise?
short answer, pretty quick. I talked with my wife about it, and we had a good conversation, but I just started sharing with her like all this stuff I feel like that I do, like listening to podcasts, trying to educate myself, trying to get better. Like part of it is me having like I want to prove it to my parents and like the generations before me, and I feel like I squander time if I'm not bettering myself. But in reality, a lot of it is in one year out the other. It would do a lot better if I sat in silence and actually, or sat and talked with God about this topic, right? Like I was listening about this, God, like help me understand this fully, like this person has this view, there's this view, like where are you at in all of this? Like that is you will learn so much more, even just through my 3 days of limited experience. You will learn so much more through that. What I've noticed is since I've started even just eliminating the stuff I do listen more intently, start to actually hear what's being said, start to understand and trying to apply, starting to question more. But also part of it just comes from a identity crisis of like, I don't know who I am, so I need someone to tell me what to do, and I need this fill of my heart because I don't feel fulfilled without it. And it was interesting, me and my wife having this conversation. She's like, "Oh, that opens up a whole new aspect of you that I didn't even realize." And so now she can speak into that. Hey, you're worth it, even if you don't have all this, listen to all this stuff, you don't read all these, you're still worth it. And
Mm.
so that was, personally, that was just a big revelation in our marriage. So,
All from this little challenge activity. And I think that's what I want everybody to hear. That's the benefit of doing different things, because it a challenge activity is not something you normally always do. It's something different. And you start realizing all these effects of just adding something new or doing something new, and how many things are wrongfully and positively attached to the new thing is really quite remarkable. Hey, let me switch on to this one. So we talked about the cold shower, we talked about the 10 minutes, meditating on one verse or one thought throughout the day. How did that go? That's it's a different thing than just meditating or than listening. It's a deliberate practice. How did that go?
so the one that I wanted to share that was somewhat embarrassing to me is during one of the mornings, I was like, okay, I'm going to do a devotional along with this. And I'm gonna take a passage or take one scripture and just really focus my day on like, okay, what's going on here? Like, how does this work? That kind of stuff. And I was reading Daniel chapter 6, the lion's den. Man, if you know the story, maybe go back and read it again so you actually know what's going on in the story. I'm reading through this and I'm like, oh, I know this. Like, oh, the king hates God, so then he throws Daniel in jail. No, the king does not hate God. The king is tricked into writing a rule. The king follows out in his rule and puts Daniel in the lion's den. And the king says, may your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you. The king wants Daniel to be rescued. And holy cow, that the whole day I was thinking about this of like, man, do I have such little faith where this guy who sees Daniel and knows the faith and can see the Father in him, so much so that he has faith, even not knowing the God, not knowing all that. And it's like, wow, this little story that I knew so much about, and I thought I knew what was behind it, I knew nothing about, and just sitting all day thinking about that was just, I don't know, it changed something in me into, there's a lot of stories I probably think that I know because I've read them a couple times throughout my life, or they're talked about at church, or they're talked about in Christian circles. And it's like, man, open up this thing and actually read it, and you'll start to see things. And I was just, man, there's also,
Hold
I
on,
saw
can I comment
Jesus.
on what you just said there? You'll start to see. That's a powerful word. When you can see it versus just hearing it, knowing it, information, you could see it. Something's changing. Okay, keep going.
Well, I was just gonna say, I also see Jesus in Daniel. It's the earlier on in the Daniel chapter 6, it says, because he was great ability, and the king placed him over the entire empire. And it's like, oh wow, like he's given so much because he knows God, and it's like, wow, that's amazing. And all the other administrators wanted to find fault in him, but they couldn't find it in how he was living and producing. So what they had to do was they had to go to the rules of his religion. So they went after the rules of religion to get the man separated from God. And it's like, whoa, like that's what they did to Jesus. Like they went after the rules of the religion that man had set up to go after him to separate him from God. And it's just like, man, how many things of religion do we put on ourselves that separates from God? Like it's just, it was, I don't know if you could hear it in my voice or and you guys can probably see in my face. Just that meditation for that day was just so refreshing, and it took purposely going back and wanting to meditate on something that stuck with me. So
It is so interesting listening to you, Tommy, talk about this because I've heard you share about a subject. You did more in that, just your communication there to bring life to the story than information about. And that's God talking to us. That's a living word. That's something that's living. That's where this benefits from. That is so cool. That is really cool. By the way, it makes that quiet time even more fun when you get to the 10 minutes. All right, what was going on in that king's mind? And just listen. Like it just doesn't stop. So, Caleb, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. First of all, with Tommy, like, I think it is really interesting how you can tell when somebody's talking about it, like the enthusiasm switch that goes on, and you're like, oh, they get it. And I'm like trying to think like, okay, how do I get that? Because you can tell that it's something real that's there. So whenever you hear somebody talking like that, that's like that's not only a thing for yourself, but that's like a contagious thing because now it's like, okay, well, I want to understand Daniel like that. What was I missing when I just heard it in Sunday school and went, oh, yeah, cool story, I guess. Lions and not getting eaten by lions. Yeah, cool. Like, I think that's huge. So that's really encouraging to hear, mainly because I think I struggled with the all day meditation thing more so because I think it goes back to this week, just the eye opening of the amount of distractions that I've let myself accrue with social media and these other things that, again, like a year ago, I would be like, what on earth? And I think like the one verse that I did meditate on, which would be like, I'd read it in the morning and then throughout, because, my priority was do this in the morning because I know that the rest of the day just ain't going to be the best as far as my success. But interestingly enough, the one that I did read was Romans 8, and that starts off, so now there is no condemnation for those who believe in Christ. And that chapter goes on to talk about like the freedom in God, freedom from the law. And I think it's just been this whole week with the challenge was just like this culmination of, I don't know how to put the question that's been put to me, but more like, what do I really want my life to look like in the daily sense but like in the culmination of this larger thing. And I think between the meditation, the 10 minutes, the cold shower was like hard physically, but maybe not as much mentally as the other elements. More of the realization of all these different distractions in my life, and more like, I know that, Bryan, you're saying this could be a different conversation, but realizing like, okay, why do I have these distractions? Okay, well, I mean, I think it's the same thing as why a doctor gives a prescription to cover up the symptoms of something that's a bigger issue. And I think I saw that throughout everything. Now, granted, I can give you all the excuses, and I also, Jason's not here, but I kind of had a joke in my head of like, respect to Jason because being with like six younger cousins all week who wake up before you do normally and are up just as late and have all the energy in the world, I was like, okay, how do people who have a lot of kids do it? I don't know. But I think it was just, regardless of that and silly excuses, I think it was a lot of revelation of like, do I want my daily life to be so connected and so focused on God that these things are a natural part of it instead of my distractions, which are now a natural part of it, if that makes sense. Like going on social media. Like I deleted social media. That's an easy one to get rid of. Like it's not even like, oh man, what am I gonna miss? Like all these different lies that you tell yourself to give yourself the excuse to keep on distracting yourself. And like even in the past month, like it being so bad, I would like get out of the shower, be getting ready for work, and boom, podcast is right on. Well, like this week, it was like, all right, can I think about this verse? Just even a section of a verse. Like, I mean, on the Appalachian Trail, again, I'll go back to that because it was easy then per se, but just different. I've meditated on two words for like 2 or 3 months straight in Job, where it says, brace yourself like a man, for I have some questions for you. And so, kind of, I think this week has really been like a comparison of where my life is now versus what was a year ago, and what do I want it to look like for another whole year. Because the fall is really kind of like what has been a year for me. So I know that's a lot relative outside of the meditate on the verse, but yeah, it's just been really eye-opening. And I think Romans 8 is relevant to that. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, I think you guys, you're saying some very insightful things. So I'm hoping as we get, we keep adding challenges. There is a interesting blend between all these challenges. One thing too, another additive, I took Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, and it was where God says, "Have I not commanded you to be strong and of good courage?" Not a suggestion, not a thought, not something you should be. But this was Joshua was commanded by God. Like, you understand what a command is. Like, there's the 10 commandments, and then there's Joshua's command. You be strong and good courage, and I'll be with you. Don't be afraid. Don't be dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with you wherever you go. And so I took that verse and I was pondering it all day. And I'm like, every situation, okay, am I being dismayed by that? But I'm commanded not to. So, God, how do I do it when I don't feel like it? Like, how do I? And then it talked about meditate on the word day and night. Okay, so I can meditate on the word day and night. That keeps me in this command. Therefore, I can deal with the things coming. And so I was kind of practicing putting all that together since we have to meditate on a verse every day. I thought I would go to a verse that says you have to meditate all the time. And I bet you guys found you could keep those thoughts in your head in everything you were doing. It didn't mean you were in a numbness of just a reciprocating words flipping around in your head. It's like you can just keep applying it, going, well, how do I be not condemned in this situation? It can be you're constantly in a thinking that you're putting the verse or that thought in the template of your day versus making your day the template. And then, okay, so switching a little bit, by the way, for the listener, if you ever want to know where the cold shower takes place, if you can't shut your brain down, go jump in a cold shower. You will stop thinking about everything really quickly. Right? Right? You're not thinking about nothing else. Man, when that water, I could handle the cold water everywhere, but when it hit my back, oh man, it's like it hit a nerve, and it's like you don't think about nothing. So, by the way, it is a true thing. If your brain just can't shut off, like you're worried or you're anxious or you just can't shut it down, I am very serious. Go hop in a cold shower. It'll restart your nervous system and now reset it to where you want to go. So these little habits are not just like can go, they can be incorporated constantly into your life. How about
One
the
thing,
running and the fitness? Go ahead.
one thing I just want to add to that before you move on to the fitness is that restart with the cold shower. If if anyone's having a rough day, let's say you come home from work and you're lacking the want to do anything, I challenge you to take a cold shower, and all of a sudden, life is on fire. You're good to go. I can't tell you how many times that little tidbit has saved me from nights of like, all right, I'm just gonna sit on the couch because I can't do this. It's been a long day. And it's like, boom, you do that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, the world's on fire, and I'm in go mode, and there's just something about it. And yep, but
Tommy,
the
I
cold.
would never have believed you. I would never, you could have told me that all day long. I can listen to podcasts about it. But until I was in the challenge, because I didn't want to lose, this is where the motivation of competing. I wouldn't even have done it if you just said, hey, add this as a habit for your day. I wouldn't have done it. It was because it was a challenge and I didn't want to lose the challenge. I did the darn cold shower. And I am telling you, it did that. But that's where the competitiveness I'm not trying to beat you, but I don't want to be the guy that's dragging. So it adds this little bit of I'm going to get razzed if I don't do it. So I'm going to do it. All right. So Everybody
And to
listening,
add,
try the
yeah,
cold shower.
and let it hit your back, let it hit your head, let it hit your toes, touch it with your hands, get
Dang.
your whole body in that feeling, and it'll do a lot for you. But the other point I wanted to add to that is in the mornings, if I didn't do the cold shower, oh man, the rest of the challenges were just, oh, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. If I did the cold shower, I'm like, okay, I did the hardest thing. I got to do them all now. There's no way I'm not doing the other ones if I just did this. But the exercise, the walking, I proved a little bit of a challenge to me. The Me and my wife, we did a couple walks this week, which were good. We had stopped walking because it started to get cold. And this challenge ignited. I'm like, I gotta go for a walk. And she's like, you want to walk right now? I'm like, yep. And she's like, okay. And got all bundled up and we went for a 2 mile walk. It was like 20 degrees. It was cold, but we had a good time. And I think we've kind of discovered something too, is just like getting out when it's cold. It gives you more energy too. Like there's a part of this where it just like all these activities led to an active lifestyle which gave us more energy. Like it just naturally boosted energy throughout the day. And especially in a season of like Thanksgiving where it's like, I just want to sit and watch football and eat turkey and eat all this delicious pie and all this food. And it's like, just kind of like choosing not to do that and focus on these challenges was like actually really helpful. The push-ups struggled more than I thought. The other ones were easy, and that's fine. But there was like a ooh, okay, I gotta get better at the push-ups. Like that was challenging, and I didn't break them up throughout the day. I just did all 30. I did 3 sets of 10 just right back to back, and I was like, ooh, the push-ups got me a little bit more than I thought they would. And so there's still this little piece of like learning in each part. So I think the physical is definitely necessary in life. Um, you you need to move your body. And if you haven't, start with a simple challenge like this. Man, do three exercises 3 times, 5 reps each. Like do something. Because I'm already excited to what we're gonna do this next week. I don't know what it is, but I'm excited because it's gonna be good.
Caleb?
Yeah, I'd agree with Tommy. I think, well, first of all, I didn't get the 3 mile run, and I'll explain my really great excuse that I have. Because I have before I left for this last work trip that I was on before Thanksgiving, I was consistently running 2 to 3 miles a day for about 2 weeks straight. So during Thanksgiving, I was like, all right, 3 miles to run over the course of 7 days. Okay, I'll do it Monday, right before the podcast, right when I get back. And I kind of got delayed in getting back and hopped on the podcast, and so I missed my running. And so I think this whole challenge was like such a big learning thing. But I think sitting here right now, how much better would it have been if I had been consistent running even 3/4 of a mile or a mile a day over the course of 5 days than waiting till the last second to go, okay, let's run the 3 miles because I know I can do that in, like 45 minutes or whatever, pretty easy, like pretty relaxed and do it right before. And so I think like having the push-ups, the sit-ups, and the squats every day consistently, that motivated me to do it because it wasn't like, for myself, I wasn't like, well, I'm gonna make up for it and do 150 push-ups in one day at the end of this challenge. That would be very dumb. So I think I agree with Tommy. The push-ups were the most challenging aspects. The squats were pretty easy. The crunches weren't too hard. So I split up my push-ups and throughout the day a little bit more than the other stuff, doing it right first thing in the morning. So I was like, all right, upper body strength, that's something to focus on as well. But yeah, I really like the physical aspect again, the doing that first thing in the morning and then getting into the shower and the cold, like that full combination of everything at once. There's not a better way to start the day. And also now that Tommy mentioned the getting a cold shower at the end of the day after work, that also motivates me to try it as well because it's just a different way to test what a challenge will do for you at a different time of the day. So I think changing the mentality a little bit of get it out of the way at these different steps because the point of the challenge is not just to do it. And I think I may slightly disagree with you, Bryan, on why I'm motivated to do the challenge. Because competition, like I could come back here and be like, "Oh, I didn't do anything, guys," and be like, kind of like you guys could give me a hard time, but I'm like stubborn enough that I wouldn't care too much. So
Well,
I think,
we will think less of you, but anyway.
yeah, yeah, but the like I know that's I'm kind of okay with that. I'd be like, all right, well, too bad. So for me, it's more like the challenges are like, okay, what can I find out when I challenge myself like that? Like that's what's always motivated me to challenge myself is not like I mean, granted, sometimes there's can I prove something to somebody or what are they going to think if I fail? But I've done that enough times that now the thing that motivates me more for a challenge is can I prove to myself or give myself the evidence that I can do what I believe I can? Like when I started the Appalachian Trail, I really believed I could do that thing no problem. And I was like, everybody else just isn't mentally tough enough. Found out that was not true because there is some discipline that has to go into doing something. So I think that motivation of, okay, the point of this challenge is not to just do it, to get it over with so I can have some street cred with Bryan and hope that he doesn't kick me off the podcast for doing such a bad job. The point is that I'm going to discover something like the same thing with the 10 minutes of the father. What are you going to discover if you challenge yourself like that? Because nobody ever discovered anything sitting around and not doing something that was hard. Like all my favorite people in history, specifically Ernest Shackleton, if he hadn't have gone like, all right, what can we discover out there? What can we push ourselves beyond human limits and lead men into? They wouldn't like we wouldn't even know who they are in history. So I think like with the fitness aspect, that's a huge element of challenging yourself physically to give yourself evidence of, okay, I can challenge myself. What else can I discover when I challenge myself? So that's like always a big reminder. And I think like a challenge that I've been doing on and off successfully and unsuccessfully for myself is running every day. And then when this challenge came along, I was like, all right, I'm just going to take a break from the running and leave it to the last minute, and then totally failed on the running part. So it's like just a reminder of consistency as well being important. So
It's funny. I was just gonna say, Caleb, I am the opposite. I was constantly thinking about you doing something, Jason doing something, and Bryan doing something. I'm like, I don't want to be the guy who doesn't do the thing. So a lot of it was interesting. It is interesting to see what motivates you and what motivates me, and how do we actually kind of meld both of them. Because I think that's where you're going to get the best motivational from. Is like, I can't always be externally motivated because what if I am the top of my field? Then what? Who else is there to push, right? And if that becomes the limit of what I'm capable of, right? And so I almost need then the opposite of like what you're saying of like I need to challenge myself and find a challenge beyond that, just not what the razzing of the guys, but like hearing the running, like I walked. And now all of a sudden this week I'm like, I hope there's a running challenge because you guys are all going down and I'm gonna I'm gonna run and I'm gonna get hurt and I'm gonna be so happy because I ran. But another part too is something that just opened my eyes too was this these challenges showed weakness in other areas that would make me better at the challenges. My hips have never been so tight for whatever reason this week. And so I had to ask my wife, I'm like, how do I stretch my hips? And she showed me stretches and they worked. And it's like, okay, now I got to start stretching if I'm going to do this because I'm not going to live in the pain of tight hips and trying to do this. I'm going to start stretching. And so it's like these other little things that are now going to become a part of my life is like, I sit in a chair a lot during the day. I got to get up and I got to move. I got to find ways to stretch when I'm sitting down in a chair. I got to find these little things that are going to make me better in the challenges, but the challenges expose the weaknesses that I had.
This is so great. We're going to keep going on to this in next week. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the benefits of different challenges and how there's an actual there's a mental, spiritual, and physical thing that actually does for us. And again, if you want to join in, we'll kind of walk through with I think we're going to do a repeat of the challenge, but just modify it a little bit for everybody. So if you want to do this, and you're free to comment if you're able to do it. Comment each day you got it done. Don't look at it like, oh, I need to start an exercise program. Oh, I need to start a special devotional so I talk to God program. Oh, I need. It is not creating a new program. You are just adding an element to your life. One thing that these will really expose what's important to you. They will expose, and we're all dealing with this, and we're being vulnerable here because of how we're feeling. It's like, if I don't get it done today, it won't be done later. And the reason is because later it's not important. Other things are more important, and you start discovering how many things are important. And I'm going to throw out a little thought that you might say, man, I got all these things in my life. I got, like Jason, I got 20 kids. I got all this stuff, and trying to get all this stuff plugged in, I can't get it all done. I'm going to push back a little bit, say I disagree. I You can't get it all done because other things are more important. If you were the admiral of a aircraft carrier in the US Navy, you have 5,000 employees. You're responsible for multi-billion dollars of equipment. Your decisions determine could determine war or not war. I mean, you are so influential, and they still make their bed in the morning, and they still have their time to read. They have their habits that they form so they can do that. We have to be able to realize we have to have that. Jesus had his habits. Hey, I got to get away. I'm going to go refresh. There's times you have some flexibility with it, but you have to build habits. So building habits is critical so the world doesn't control you. Your life doesn't control you. You're able to lead your life. So I want you just to add that in. There's another benefit there. All right. So that's gonna do it. You still have to do your 10 minutes, your meditation, completion of 5 mile run, but you have to do some kind of cardio every single day and mark what it is. We still have the push-ups, sit-ups, and air squats, but if you're doing an exercise that includes like your chest, you can bypass your push-ups for the day, or you can bypass your legs if you're on a leg day. Okay. So that's still your power three that we need to do. And the cold shower is still on for 30 seconds of some point during the day. So there'll be if you guys will be getting an app option in the future, but we're currently testing one. So listener, for the guys on the podcast, make a note. So if you're a listener and you're doing it, just make a note somewhere what you did with that cold shower. So there's some kind of identifier. On this day I did this. It'll help you later on to know when something helped and when something did it, to make it much more of a permanent habit in your life, or to modify it. All right. So this is for your benefit. It's competitive, but it's also for learning. So all right, everyone. So we're currently in a how-to, and we're going to continue that way. So we might be talking about some areas and some different books and some scripture verses throughout time, but we want to bring it back to what can I go do with this? Because you walking away with experiencing it is going to be way better than you just learning about it. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Until then, keep the faith and stay in the fight.